But then from that very first text message, what I kept thinking about all the time was, if I go to space and this is a reality, what would I actually do that's a little bit special when I go there? So I thought, well, why not think of something cool to do in space? So a group of us were having drinks one night in Mayfair, and one of my friends said, well, why don't you do the first trade in space? so I thought, okay, that's a really cool idea. So I called up the CEO of the space company and said, does the technology exist where I can press a button on the dashboard and send an order from space electronically to a piece of software via the internet maybe, that will place an order into the market and trade? And he's like, let me check with the aerospace company. I'm pretty sure there is. So they called the aerospace company. A few days later, they came back, said, yeah, totally. We're now discussing sending tweets from space. So I was like, okay, pretty interesting. So I went for a holiday. This would have been August 2011 at this stage. Went for a holiday to Ibiza, and then booked a flight. Booked a flight to Amsterdam after Ibiza to go and sign the contract, because we got to a stage where the contract was pretty much exactly how I wanted it. Then went through the contract in their office and asked them to put one more point in the contract, right at the very end. I think it was like point number 65. The company must provide the passenger with the technology that enables the passenger to execute the first financial transaction in space. So they took the contract in the back, wrote it in, and then I signed, transferred the money. Then went to Guinness World Records when I got home. They're actually based near Holborn. Quite an interesting outfit. Went in, made an appointment with the top guys there. Went to see them and just said, how about it? Can you give me the first financial transaction in space? Can you open this record? They said, no, because it's a first, which means it's unbreakable. Someone has to be able to break the record. So it was like, they're like, we only give a few firsts away per year. So it was like, well, if you do the highest as well, the highest trade that's ever been executed, then we can come to a compromise and do the first. So they issued and opened both records, and it took about 3 months of negotiations. So then they give you guidelines of what rules you must stick to break the records, one of which is that we have to film everything from the cockpit live, and it has to be an electronic transaction. So we did a deal with YouTube, where similar to the Felix Baumgartner jump, the live jump that he did from 128,000 feet, we did a deal with YouTube that my flight will be live on YouTube, so everyone in the world can watch it, and everyone can see me hit the button and do the first trade. But we're going much higher than Felix. We're going 335,000 feet. Felix wasn't actually in space. So what he did was, obviously incredible. I wouldn't jump from 130,000 feet. but I'm going to be in a cockpit with one other person. So essentially, the pilot, who's an ex-NASA astronaut, and myself, I'm classed with the FAA as a co-pilot. So we have to do quite rigorous training to make sure that if anything happens to him, I might be able to find a way back to Earth.
What are you going to buy? What's up?
Yeah, well, we're actually talking to sponsors at the moment. There's 2 types of sponsor that we've kind of identified that it suits, the project suits. Obviously, the first type of sponsor is a trading platform provider. So software companies that make trading platforms, or brokers, or even banks. So those guys, we don't want to really trade if we only have one of those sponsors, a stock, Because if you trade a certain stock, you're giving free advertising to the company whose stock it is, right? So, and it's obviously worth something if you trade their stock and there's millions of people watching live on YouTube. So if we do only get a software provider, trading platform or broker, we'll just trade a currency pair. So we'll probably trade sterling US dollar. But if we do actually secure a corporate sponsorship where they're paying us to basically, out of their advertising budget, to trade their stock, then we're going to trade their stock. But what we intend to do is make sure, that they're pretty decent trades, size-wise, and they get global exposure.
What's the volume, you think?
I think currency trades, certainly $10 million. For a stock, maybe $1 to $2 million. But they have to be decent, decent, yeah.
Any more questions? We'll just finish up after a few more. Yep.
Given the structural decline in the financial industry, would you still go into trading now as things are? What kind of advice would you give to people?
Yeah, personally now, if I was 20 years old and had the knowledge that I have as a 34-year-old about the industry, if I was to go into an investment bank, I'd go in for a couple of years, but with the target of not being trapped within the investment bank. And you won't be trapped anyway, which is a good thing, because, and this is very, very important for you to understand before you ever go into the industry. When you go and work for one of the investment banks, the first 2 years you're not on a permanent contract. You're a 2-year contractor. You're not even an employee of the company. And I was that at Goldman Sachs, for 2 years. And you go in as a financial analyst here. And then when you're promoted to associate, that's when you're actually a full-time member of staff. So what you'll find is lots of people on the trading floor who are all financial analysts. They're actually, there's hundreds of them, globally, just walking around the offices doing projects, being paid very little for a lot of work with not great career prospects. My day in 2002, 2 years after I joined, 8% of the original analyst program was still working at the company 2 years later. So what I would do is go in, get the experience, and actually leave and seek to go to a hedge fund as quickly as possible, or move out of the country and go to an emerging market or a frontier market. But go and learn where the infrastructure is, where you can learn. But don't think you're going to get paid, because you won't. It's crazy that there's guys in the industry now where they've got masters, PhDs, MBAs, and they're going in on programs for 2 years, and what they're getting paid on an hourly basis is half what you get paid in McDonald's. So you get guys in corporate finance who are working 90, 100 hours a week, and their per hour salary per annum is £6. That's half McDonald's. It's half Pret-a-Manger, right? It's crazy. So I think people have to realize this and wake up to the reality of the numbers, that going to work for these places now isn't going to make you very wealthy in a short space of time. Nowadays, you go for a very long career. Expect to be there for 15 to 25 years before you can actually consider yourself a wealthy person. If I was 20 again, I would go in for a couple of years and then go out to emerging and frontier markets, or try and get straight into a hedge fund at the youngest possible age. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah.
So do you think that the 2 years of training that you get at the bank is the best? I mean, is it worth training an investment bank for 2 years? Or you can get a bit of training somewhere else?
No, I think we've got to define what the training actually is. Your training isn't you waking up in the morning, taking your rucksack and your notepad and going into a lecture theatre, and then traders are coming in and teaching you how to trade. You're on the desk. You're doing your job. You've got your hands to the pump. You're part of the desk. So your education and your training is actually on the job. So it's good to do it because you're kind of like riding the wave of the current market environment. And you get your hands dirty and you learn everything inside out. And as long as you keep an open mind and work hard and learn that stuff, it's a good education. But don't go in with the unrealistic expectation that within 5 years you're going to be a multi-millionaire and you're going to be the hottest kick-ass trader in the market, because it doesn't exist anymore. You've got to go to a hedge fund for that. Like I said earlier, what's left at the investment banks is what 5-10 years ago was the bad stuff in the company. So you've got to go in and really have a bit of self-interest and learn about the industry while you're doing it. And then keep to your own objective. Don't let the relative measure of, well, I earn £100,000 and the national average salary is 35. Don't let that seduce you into staying at a firm. It's too safe. You'll just end up with liabilities for the rest of your life. You'll be trapped.
Okay, guys, I think we'll wrap it up there. I hope you've all enjoyed it. If we could just give Anton a nice round of applause, please.